Greetings, sisters, and welcome to Wonder Woman, Warrior for Peace. My name is Angela, and this is Episode 7, 75th Anniversary Edition. Yay! Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Happy birthday, Wonder Woman!
Welcome back, and yes, that's right, sisters. October 25th, 2016 is the 75th anniversary of the shelf date for All-Star Comics number 8, the first appearance of Wonder Woman. Now, I'm hoping that this episode can be released either on or shortly before that day, if I can get the editing done on time, fingers crossed. But yeah, the cover date for All-Star Comics number 8 was technically January 1941, but it actually hit shelves on October 25th. So we are having a celebration this episode. We're going to do our normal reviews and then move on to some special guest stars whom you might have heard of before. When I say that, it sounds like a celebrity. It's not a celebrity. I didn't get Lynda Carter or nobody on here. I mean, no disrespect to my guests. I'm excited to have them. But yeah, my show's not that big that I can get. Not that, hey, Lynda Carter, if you're out there, open invitation. Anytime you want to come on Warrior for Peace, you are more than welcome to. But yeah, I'm really excited to have guests on, and that's going to be towards the end of the episode, so make sure you stick around. But first, we've got some issues to review, so let's get right into that. We're starting with Sensation Comics Volume 1, Issue 6. The cover date is June 1942. The writer is Charles Moulton, who we know was really William Moulton Marsdin. Art is by Harry G. Peter. And I'm reading this from Wonder Woman Archives, Volume 1. The issue starts with Colonel Darnell promoting Steve to the rank of Major for breaking up spy plots, though Steve insists that Wonder Woman should get the credit. He then informs Trevor that he's leaving on a top-secret mission to England, and the new Major will be acting commander in his absence. Diana wants to be Steve's secretary since she's familiar with the CO's work, but he decides to keep Lila on and give Miss Prince 2 weeks vacation. While cleaning out Lila's desk, Diana finds a death threat sent to Steve from Baroness Paula von Gunther. She confronts Lila, who says Steve laughed at it when she showed it to him. But with von Gunther's recent escape from prison, Diana decides she must track down the villain. It's revealed that back on Paradise Island, Hippolyte has been watching her daughter's exploits via the magic sphere, and, seeing that she needs help, consults the goddesses. Athena and Aphrodite say that Diana has proven herself worthy and is to return to Paradise Island to be given a great gift. Hippolyte sends her daughter a message via the mental radio, so she returns to the barn where she stashed her invisible plane. She speeds along at a very specific 2,000 miles an hour, and once over the island her electronic mist beam breaks through the clouds. As she flies over her home, she sees that an athletic meet is taking place, so after she lands she turns on the radio to learn that the next competition is a girl lassoing contest while riding kangas. She decides to join in disguise, so she quickly saddles Jumpa, her favorite kanga, which turn out to be giant kangaroos. Think like the Tauntauns from Empire Strikes Back and you've got a pretty good idea. You know, those things that Han thought smelled bad on the outside? The goal is to lasso an opponent and pull her off her steed, then tie her up so she's out of the match, all while the kangas are jumping 50 feet into the air. Finally, there are 2 competitors left, Mala and the masked Diana. Mala is able to rope her opponent, but Diana's strength lets her break the lasso easily. She then defeats her rival and is awarded the championship, and the Amazons are amazed to see that, once unmasked, the winner is actually their princess. Next we see Hippolyte commanding the craftswoman Metalla to take the Queen's magic girdle, which makes the Amazons invincible, and remake the unbreakable chain links into a lasso. She soon delivers the Queen the slenderest chain ever made, which is strong enough to contain Hercules. Wonder Woman enters, hugging her mother and saying she thought she'd never be allowed back on Paradise Island. Hippolyte tells her she can't stay, but she's being rewarded by the goddesses for her work in man's world. Diana's given the lasso, and she spends all night praying to Athena and Aphrodite, who appear in the morning and tell her that whoever is caught in the lasso will be compelled to obey her. Mala finds Wonder Woman and says she wants to go to man's world when the princess goes back. Diana says she mustn't give up her heritage, but Mala insists she'll follow in her own plane if she has to, so Wonder Woman catches her in the lasso and makes her promise not to. After bidding her mother farewell, Diana flies back to America, and on the way hears a news report on the radio that a bomb exploded in Steve Trevor's office, but thankfully he had recently changed offices. Realizing von Gunther's threat was not as empty as the Major thought, Wonder Woman rushes to tell Steve what she learned from the magic sphere. He informs her that Colonel Darnell's ship, the Gigantic, has disappeared. We then get a flashback where we see Baroness von Gunther escaping from her prison transport. At her hideout, she has her men strap a captive to a metal bed frame to test if her new invisible ray is dangerous to humans. Both the bed and the girl disappear and reappear unharmed, so von Gunther orders her men to put the device aboard the Gigantic in the cabin of Lady Chumpley, whom the Baroness has kidnapped because of their similar appearance. Disguised as Chumpley, von Gunther infiltrates the ship and has her men sabotage the engine while she sets up the invisible ray and destroys the ship's radio. Once the rest of the convoy has moved on, she uses her own transmitter to signal a waiting U-boat. Colonel Darnell is moved to the sub, but the German commander, von Lochner, will not let the Americans escape in lifeboats before sinking the Gigantic. Back in Washington, Steve cries that it would take their fastest plane 5 hours to reach the ship's last known location, some 2,000 miles away. But Wonder Woman says she can get him there in an hour. They arrive as the U-boat's torpedo is speeding toward the American ship, so Wonder Woman dives out of the invisible plane and into the water. She climbs onto the torpedo just in time and steers it away from the Gigantic. She rides it like a motorized surfboard back to the U-boat and lassos the commander, compelling him to have his men surrender. They are left for the Gigantic, while Wonder Woman carries von Lochner and the Baroness to her plane, saying she's taking them to her own prison to try to reform them. In what by now feels like tradition, the issue wraps up with Steve getting the credit while saying it belongs to Wonder Woman, who bemoans the fact that Steve is mooning over her hero persona while ignoring Diana Prince. So yeah, we have here the first appearance of the Lasso of Truth. I was genuinely surprised to see that it was actually a chain. I mean, you can see in the artwork, whenever she holds it up, it's this really thin chain like you'd have with a necklace. It's not braided or anything. I thought that was really interesting, and I'm wondering how long it's going to be before it takes on the normal rope look that we're used to. It's cool that Steve got a promotion. He's now a major, just like in the TV show. I was genuinely surprised to see that Wonder Woman was allowed back on Paradise Island already. I mean, as she said, she was told that she would never be allowed back, but it's good to see that we're getting to explore more of Amazon culture. I'd heard of the giant kangaroos before, so I wasn't too weirded out by that. They're kind of ridiculous, but at this point, I'm just having to accept the Golden Age silliness, otherwise, I'm not going to be able to get through this. Something interesting to note, Mala is actually the one who first found Steve's plane with Wonder Woman, and she was also the runner-up in the contest to decide who would go back to America with Steve. Each of the contestants is wearing a number. Mala is 12 and Diana is 7 in this issue, and it's interesting to see that they had those exact same numbers back when they had the tournament in All-Star Comics 8. Here in the Golden Age, they spell Diana's mother's name with an E on the end, Hippolyte, whereas in the other comics, it's Hippolyta. From what I can tell, it's spelled both ways in Greek mythology. Or, well, English translations of Greek mythology, obviously. So yeah, the lasso's original power was to compel a person to do whatever the wielder said. I'm not exactly sure when that's going to switch over to it makes you tell the truth. We have the return of Baroness Paula von Gunther, who's just as crafty as she was last time. And I thought the fact that the invisible plane went at exactly 2,000 miles an hour and then the ship was 2,000 miles away was a nice touch. So I like this issue. Let's give it 3 stars. Next up, we have the post-crisis era with Wonder Woman Volume 2, Issue 7, Rebirth! And there's extra emphasis on the end because it has an exclamation point. And I'm a stickler like that. Cover date is August 1987. George Perez was the plotter and penciler. Len Wein was the scripter. Bruce D. Patterson was the inker. John Costanza was the letterer. Tatiana Wood was the colorist. And Karen Berger was the editor. And I'm reading this from the Wonder Woman by George Perez omnibus. On Mount Olympus, the gods are rejoicing as Zeus decrees a celebration feast now that the fear of oblivion is past. As the party goes on, Athena tells the king of the gods that Diana is close to death. We see Themyscira, its health fully restored, and the Amazons performing a ritual of revival on Diana as she floats in the shallows off the shore of the Island of Healing. Zeus, having now taken an interest in the Amazons, watches with a few of the other Olympians and decides to help, though not before Pan makes some inappropriate allusions as to the possibilities an island of women holds. The Thunder God sends a command to Aeolus, god of the wind, and Poseidon, and the Amazons rejoice to see their prayers answered as the wind rises up and Diana sinks to the bottom of the sea. There, Poseidon has the Nereids, a group of water spirit sisters, heal her wounds and breathe life back into her. She shoots out of the ocean in a ball of light, and Zeus appears in the clouds, commending Hippolyta and her daughter. Athena, standing on a balcony and carrying her owl, is met by Artemis, who tells her that she's worried Zeus's new interest in the Amazons could go the wrong way, especially after Pan's comments. Hera approaches and tells the two that she will help them, that she's sorry she let Zeus's opinion cloud her judgment about the Amazons, and that she'd like to change her ways. Athena's owl takes off, and next we see Diana trying to convince her mother that her work in man's world is not done. She needs to fulfill Ares' order to teach mankind, not to mention making sure her friends are okay and healing Vanessa Capitelis. Hippolyta wishes she had some sign that it's the right thing to do, and suddenly Athena's owl appears, delivering the Amazon princess a gift, the winged sandals of Hermes, which Diana can use to travel from Paradise Island to man's world whenever she wants. Hippolyta relents, though she says she has certain conditions her daughter will have to fulfill. At the hospital in Boston, doctors are still baffled by Vanessa's aged condition. She's still getting weaker, and there's nothing they can do about it. We see Etta talking to General Hillary, who's reluctant to believe their story about what happened at the missile base, and unfortunately Wonder Woman disappeared in an instant before she could corroborate. Suddenly, a code red alarm draws the two to Vanessa's surgery room, and they arrive to find Diana spreading a salve of root, herbs, and themyscirine water on the teen, which the doctors say is reversing the deterioration like magic. Asking about their friends, Wonder Woman learns from Etta about Michaelis' death, and that Steve is away on a mission. Julia is back at Harvard, so Hillary decides to send a car to bring her to the hospital. In the professor's office, Julia gets a visit from Mindy Mayer, a glamorous publicist who will pay her for information on Wonder Woman. She gets a call that her daughter is recovered, then yells at Mayer that she'd never sell out her friend before storming out of her own office. At the hospital, mother and daughter are reunited, and Diana tells Julia she has a message she must tell the world, though her mother has given her only a short time to do it. Hillary insists on a debriefing, which Wonder Woman doesn't understand. Fearing the military will ruin things, Julia convinces the general to let her take Diana away and explain things to her. Instead, they go to Mindy Mayer's office, where the publicist is all too willing to help promote Diana. She suggests a new name to keep Diana from being confused for that other Princess Di, but the Amazon refuses to use a false name, so Mayer scratches Diana Prince off her notes. They agree to use the Wonder Woman nickname, and Mayer assures Julia that their campaign will be subtle and tasteful, not a media extravaganza. She doesn't exactly keep that promise, as we see billboards of Wonder Woman posted all over Boston, her pictures on the cover of famous magazines like Life, Time, and People, and hear Mayer fielding interviews with popular talk show hosts of the time, like Phil Donahue and Joan Rivers. The military isn't happy about this sudden popularity, though. They've sent Steve and Etta away on separate missions and told them to keep quiet about the Ares assault until they're given clearance. We see Steve reading a newspaper, hoping Diana can make a difference and noting that Michaelis' widow was given a Medal of Honor in his memory. We then switch to a castle in Nottingham, England, which we're told is the ancestral home of archaeologist Barbara Minerva. Inside, we see a tiny African man named Chuma, and honestly, the best way to describe him is that he reminds me of Dobby from Harry Potter, delivering newspapers and magazines about Wonder Woman to the lady of the house. She reads about the golden lasso and decides she must have its power, ordering Chuma to prepare a potion. He thinks to himself that she is becoming addicted to the herb in the potion, and that it's driving her insane. He can't cure her, but since he owes her his life, he must keep her alive any way he can. We then see a strange potted plant underneath a picture of a jungle cat, and Chuma decides he will once again pluck the leaves so that the cheetah can live. Okay, starting out with, there's this really awesome 2-page spread of Mount Olympus and all the gods celebrating. There's Zeus and Hera and Dionysus and Athena and Hephaestus. Oh, who else we got here? Hermes, obviously. Artemis, Apollo. There's Pan down there. A bunch of other ones that I can't identify off the top of my head. It's a really awesome piece of artwork. Their take on Olympus is really cool. Although the whole MC Escher walking on the sides of the buildings thing kinda hurts my brain when I try to think about it too hard. It was a little strange to see Wonder Woman back at Paradise Island already. They explained that she just kind of disappeared. Actually reminds me of an old video game. You know, you get to the end of the level and then you're just teleported back to the hub world. They mention that when Wonder Woman rises up out of the ocean after being revived, um, it's a lot like how the Amazons were born from that lake coming up out of the water after the goddesses released their souls. And so now Diana is being reborn from the waters of the ocean. So that was a pretty cool comparison, I thought. Some foreshadowing here, I'm sure. The Oracle Menelippe says that they should be proud that Zeus is commending them, but his words are filling her with foreboding. So, yeah, that plus the whole, hey, we need to protect the Amazons from Zeus because now he's noticed them. I've got a bad feeling about this. It's pretty cool to see this Hera being so self-aware. She says she only ever acts because of her devotion to Zeus or because he's betrayed that devotion again. But now she wants to change. That's pretty cool. In the original myths, Hera is cast in the role of the bitter, vindictive wife a lot of the time, so it's good to see her deciding she wants to make a change. A little detail here I didn't notice on my first read-through. When she's in the surgery room healing Vanessa, Wonder Woman is actually wearing Hermes' sandals over her boots. That's a nice touch. And the doctor here is kind of a little too aware of what's going on. He's like, she's using a special salve made from roots and herbs and the special waters that surround her island home. As a doctor, it sounds ridiculous, but it's working. I'm just like, seriously? You can tell all that just from seeing her spreading some gunk on the kid's face? Or she told you that and you said, oh yeah, no problems, crazy lady in a star-spangled bathing suit. You can go right ahead and do that to my patient. When we first see this Mindy Mayer, she's dressed all fancy in like a fur coat and a bunch of pearls. But then when they see her in her office, they make a big deal. Even her secretary is kind of confused. And the only thing I can think is that she's dressed a lot more casually. She's got like a yellow button up and a pair of jeans and some long orange 80s looking vest. It is a little odd. I'm not quite sure if they're trying to tell us something about the character, that she likes to dress up all fancy when she goes out, but when she's in her own space, she gets a lot more casual. Looking back, it's a little hard to tell. Like, say, when I watched, oh, what was that movie? Pretty in Pink, I think? Yeah, that was it, Pretty in Pink, where, they're making fun of the girls' fashion, and they're all wearing this, what to us today looks like ridiculous clothing that anybody would be made fun of for wearing. Bunch of 80s references here that I don't entirely get. Mayer talks about Radcliffe and NOW at the same time she's talking about the Joan Rivers show. I have Googled and I cannot find any information about those. Presumably they were 80s talk shows, but I don't know enough to get that reference, unfortunately. The depiction of Chuma here at the end, yeah, that's unfortunate. Very dated kind of portrayal that you really couldn't get away with these days. Although part of me thinks that it might be an act on his part, because when he speaks, he's got heavily accented speech, which I am not going to attempt to replicate. But then when he's thinking to himself, the text is normal. So hopefully it's not as bad as I know some of the portrayals of people of color in the 40s comics are going to get. Oh, I do want to point out, in one of the newspapers that we see, there's an article about the Godfrey campaign gathering momentum. Yeah, that's a reference to the first major crossover after the Crisis on Infinite Earths. It was called Legends, and this character called Glorious Godfrey disguised himself as a politician called G. Gordon Godfrey, and he was leading this campaign to turn public opinion away from superheroes, and apparently at one point it got so powerful that the president actually outlawed superheroing. So I always like seeing little references to continuity like that. It makes the world feel connected. So I really like this issue. It's a nice transition tying up the loose ends from the last arc and setting up for what's going to happen next. So let's give this one 4 stars. Okay, now for the New 52 era, we have Wonder Woman Volume 4, Issue 7, Il Gangster dell'Amore. My apologies to every Italian-speaking person out there whose teeth I just set on edge. Cover date is May 2012. Executive editor was Eddie Berganza. Cover artist was Cliff Chiang. The writer was Brian Azzarello. Pencils and inker was Cliff Chiang. Colorist was Matthew Wilson. Letterer was Jared K. Fletcher. And the editors were Matt Idelson and Chris Conroy. And I'm reading this from Wonder Woman Volume 2, Guts. A blonde man with twin shoulder holsters exits the Club Eros nightclub in Florence, Italy. He's chased by a desperate man, who says the object of his affection has become obsessed and won't leave him alone. He wants the blonde man to undo what he did, but the guy pulls out one of his golden guns and says he gave the man what he wanted. As the scared lover runs away, there's a blue flash and Wonder Woman, Hermes, and Lennox appear. Hermes says they need a favor, and the armed man embraces him, saying of course he'll help his uncle. The gun-wielding Eros leads the trio to a jewelry store, warning them that the smith doesn't like guests. Once inside, he takes them to what looks like a back door, but it actually opens underneath Mount Etna, to the forge of the god Hephaestus. Meeting with the metalworker, who looks like an ogre wearing hinged knee braces and with hands and forearms made from cooling lava, it seems that our heroes have come for weapons to help them get Zola back from hell. Wonder Woman tells Hephaestus her lasso, which he forged, has served her well, but he replies that it's not a weapon and offers her a weighted whip instead. As they talk, a giant creature of molten metal rises out of the forge and attacks Hephaestus's mechanical-looking workers. The smith god rushes to attack with his hammer, saying the crocodile monster has been sent by hell. He's caught in the creature's maw, so Wonder Woman causes a giant crucible of water above the monster to rain down, solidifying it so she can shatter it with the lash of her lasso. One of the workers, his helmet removed, approaches his master to report on the casualties. Wonder Woman is shocked to learn that what she thought were automatons are actually men in suits. Hephaestus tells her they're all brothers, the male children of the Amazons. A confused Wonder Woman says she thought the gods made sure there were only female Amazons, but Hephaestus explains that 3 times a century the Amazons set out to sea in order to find ships from man's world, then seduce the sailors before killing them. When the children are born, the Amazons keep their daughters and trade their sons to Hephaestus in exchange for weapons. Wonder Woman wanders off, her heart heavy at the revelation. That night, Lennox goes to Wonder Woman's room, but she's already up. It seems they both had the same idea, and they sneak through the darkened halls to Hephaestus's room. When he awakens, the golden lasso is wrapped tightly around him. Wonder Woman taunts him, saying it's not the lasso, but truth that's her weapon. He replies that it's intimidation, so she throws him through a wall into his workers' dormitories. She calls for her brothers to rise up, but her epic speech is cut short when the men ask her to release their master. They explain that without him they'd have been thrown into the sea, and since he knows what that's like, he decided to raise them himself. They may appear to be slaves, but in reality they are happy to live as artists in his service. Dejected, Wonder Woman drops the lasso, and a sympathetic Hephaestus tells her to get some rest, so tomorrow she can rescue Zola. So first things first, Eros in Greek mythology is the god of love, specifically erotic love. That's where we get the word erotic from Eros. You would probably be more familiar with him by his Roman name, Cupid. So instead of a golden bow and arrow in this one, he has golden pistols. A little bit on Hephaestus. In Greek mythology, he was one of the few children of Zeus and Hera. But he was born deformed, his legs didn't work, so he was thrown off of Mount Olympus and into the ocean. But he was rescued and raised by some water spirits. He eventually made his way back to Olympus, but his workshop was supposed to be under Mount Etna, which is, of course, an active volcano. We see Lennox in this issue has some new scars on his forehead from Hera's blast last issue. It seems the idea is it's almost like he's made from rock. He's super strong, but he can still crack. And there is a funny bit where he takes his cigarette and sticks it on the lava of Hephaestus's arm to light it, which I thought was pretty funny. So, yeah, I'm kind of dancing around the big issue here. Yes, technically, in the original Greek myths, the Amazons would either capture men or go out and find men to have children with, and then would get rid of the male babies. So I guess points for being closer to the original myth, but at the same time, it really doesn't fit with the, at that point, 70-some years of history of the comics, where the Amazons were a peaceful society. Turning them into murderers and seducers just really feels like a betrayal. And to top it off, Wonder Woman grew up in that society and no one ever told her. I mean, presumably she's less than, 33 years old, and so wouldn't have been around at any point when they went on one of these expeditions. And yeah, technically they were keeping her in the dark, the whole sculpted from clay thing, so I guess it's possible they kept her in the dark about that too. But it's strange that the rest of her sisters seem to have zero problem with this, even though she's obviously horrified by this news. Though I will say the whole "we're not slaves, we want to be here" thing was an interesting twist. So I'm kind of tempted to give it 2 stars, but really, for something that changes this much of the lore this drastically, I kinda gotta go with 1 star on this one. Even though the art is good and there are other decent parts of the story, that one thing kind of overshadows them. Moving on to the TV show, we have Wonder Woman Season 1, Episode 6, Wonder Woman vs. Gargantua. Air date was December 18, 1976, starring Lynda Carter and Lyle Waggoner. Erica Bellegarde was played by Gretchen Corbett. Colonel Hans Eichler was played by Robert Loggia. Conrad Steigler was played by John Hillerman. And Gargantua was portrayed by Mickey Morton. In a Nazi-controlled section of the Congo, Wonder Woman is creeping through the jungle, a giant gorilla on her trail. Suddenly the ape attacks, lifting the Amazon over its head. She blows a dog whistle kept on a chain around her neck, and the gorilla sets her down. She then peels off her face and hair, Mission Impossible style, revealing herself to actually be a blonde woman named Erica Bellegarde. We see that the encounter was watched by some German men, who are impressed with the beast. Erica says she's trained the ape, named Gargantua, to help the Nazi war effort. 5 months later, Gargantua is on display at a circus outside Washington, D.C. The security guard tells the crowd that the gorilla is incredibly intelligent and feels the same emotions as humans. Erica, disguised as a circus performer, watches nearby. After a shift change, Erica gets off the phone with her contact and tells the new guard, Carl, that their mission is twofold: recapture a German agent who has defected to the Americans, and kill Wonder Woman if she tries to interfere. At the interrogation headquarters in Washington, Steve is questioning Conrad Steigler, a defected Nazi. After he's finished questioning the man, Steve tells the watching Yeoman Prince and General Blankenship that Steigler is going to be moved to the military's top security headquarters once the interrogation is over, but that could take weeks. At a deserted oil refinery, the Nazi spies are planning their mission to extract Steigler. Carl has discovered where the Americans are housing him, and asks why they can't just kill him. The ringleader, Colonel Hans Eichler, points out that they need to find out how much he's told the enemy first. Steve shows Steigler around his rooms in the apartment building the army has converted into a high-security safe house. He assures the man there's nothing to worry about, but after he leaves, the Germans arrive in a big covered truck. Erica lets the ape out, then uses her whistle and a photo of Steigler to send it climbing up the apartment wall. Gargantua retrieves the defector, easily taking out any MPs that get in its way. After the Nazis have gone, Steve and Diana investigate the ruined apartment, skeptical of the guard's account of being attacked by a gorilla. Back at their hideout, Carl and Eichler are ready to take their prisoner, who is claiming to have been a double agent, back to Berlin, but Erica wants to impress their commanders by bringing a captured Wonder Woman. She says Steigler is so important that Wonder Woman will try to rescue him, but Gargantua will defeat her due to its training, which she demonstrates by ordering the ape to tear a cardboard cutout of the superhero to shreds. The next day at the War Department, Etta and Diana examine the newspaper saying that Gargantua escaped the circus. They show Steve, who thinks the animal might be the one that captured Steigler, so he, Diana, and an animal behavioral scientist named Dr. Osmond examine the ruined apartment. The doctor finds fur confirming it was a gorilla, and says the beast would have to be trained to do that kind of extraction job. Blankenship is incredulous, but Osmond's lab tests conclude that Steigler was attacked by a great ape over 7 feet tall. He says that kind of training would be difficult but not impossible, especially if the ape had been trained since it was a baby. Diana suggests that locating Gargantua will be the fastest way to find Steigler, and Osmond informs them that the hair samples he found were freshly covered in crude oil. Aware of the abandoned refinery, Steve has Diana call the office to report their findings while he gathers forces to investigate. After making the call, she spins into her costume and heads to the refinery ahead of him. The Nazis spot Wonder Woman searching their hideout, and Erica explains she actually planted the oil-coated hair to lead the Amazon to them. Steigler, still trying to convince the Nazis he's a double agent, is forced to call for help. When Wonder Woman arrives, Steigler is threatened with a gun to force her into a room to fight Gargantua, though not before expressing her concern for the way the ape is being treated. As the beast lunges for her, she tries to appeal to its higher intelligence and explains that the Nazis are its true enemy. Steve and his men finally arrive at the refinery, causing the Germans to flee without the ape. As they escape, one of the MPs finds Wonder Woman and Gargantua, shooting it in the arm before he can hear the Amazon's cry for peace. They take the injured beast to Dr. Osmond's lab, where the doctor suggests the Nazis must have trained it to attack Wonder Woman because they thought it could match her. She explains that on Paradise Island they live in peace with all creatures, and Osmond says he thinks it might be possible to reprogram Gargantua. Hiding out in a waterfront warehouse, the Nazis learn that Wonder Woman has survived and Gargantua has been wounded. Erica insists on recapturing the ape, knowing it will be at Dr. Osmond's lab. That evening, Steve and Yeoman Prince visit the lab to see the progress, and the beast is friendly to Diana when she secretly reveals her true identity to it. After they leave, Erica and Eichler arrive and tie up the doctor, but Erica's commands to Gargantua are no longer effective, so she sedates him instead. The Nazis receive word that their U-boat was delayed, which Erica says will give her time to reprogram Gargantua so it can capture Wonder Woman. But during the procedure, it becomes enraged and breaks free of its bonds. Steve's men find the Nazi hideout, which happens to be one of the locations Steigler told them about, and plan their attack as Erica searches the vast warehouse for the escaped ape. Steve heads out, telling Diana it's too dangerous for her to come along, but it's not too dangerous for Wonder Woman as she once again spins into her costume. She breaks into the warehouse and quickly lassos Erica, but the men run off and Gargantua grabs her in its huge arms. She flips it over her head, stunning it, then goes to comfort the ape, saying it's been used as a tool and deserves to be free. This pacifies the beast, and when Steve and his men, who caught Carl and Eichler before they escaped, enter, they're amazed to see it's perfectly docile, and Wonder Woman explains that animals, like people, only require a little love and tenderness. At the circus a few nights later, Wonder Woman visits Gargantua, freeing it from its cage and returning it to its home in Africa. So I like the fake out at the start of this episode. At first I thought they had decided to change things up and start it in medias res, but then there was that Mission Impossible style reveal that let you know what was really going on. I actually don't have a problem with the way they did Gargantua. I mean, it's literally a man in a monkey suit, but considering the era and the budget they would have had, yeah, it's cheesy, but it's not that bad. There's a bit of a subplot running through the episode where they're not entirely sure if Steigler is a double agent or not. The Americans are suspicious that he might be, and he keeps trying to convince the Nazis he is just to save his skin. But then in the end, when they find that the Nazis are hiding in the warehouse that he told them about, the Americans can be sure, yeah, he's on our side. Kind of an interesting bit of CSI before CSI became a thing, with the doctor examining the hair and finding the oil. I'm not sure how common that kind of thing would have been in the 70s, or, well, I guess technically in the 40s. But it was kind of fun to see an early version of those kind of techniques that we just take for granted today. One thing I noticed was the picture that they used. when they were programming Gargantua was actually a shot of her from the pageant in the Beauty on Parade episode. So that was a nice bit of continuity. And Wonder Woman's concern for the ape, worrying about its treatment and making sure it gets back to Africa. It was a little corny, but it was still sweet. Robert Loggia, who played Colonel Eichler, he would go on to play Frank Lopez in Scarface, which is kind of fun when you remember that Paul Schnarr, who was the German commander in the last 2 episodes, was also in Scarface as Alejandro Sosa. So, a much better episode than last time. Not hard. But it was kind of just okay. Nothing really that memorable. So, let's give it 2 stars. Okay, now that that's taken care of, let's move on to the special 75th anniversary segment of the show. We were able to carve out a chunk of time for Matt from Radio Free Themyscira and Diablo Frank from Diana Prince Wonder Woman, and me, obviously, to get together and have a great chat about all things Wonder Woman and beyond. So this episode is going to be a bit longer than most, but hey, an Amazon princess only turns 75 once, so it's going to be worth it. Trust me. We've actually split our conversation into 2. The first half is going to be here on Warrior for Peace, and to get the second half, make sure to check out Matt's latest episode of Radio Free Themyscira. Frank is also doing a special 75th anniversary episode for his podcast, and Matt and I each recorded segments to be a part of that, so definitely check that out as well. Greetings, sisters! This is Angela.
Hello, my sister Amazons and my brother Manazons. This is Matt.
Hola, Diablo Frank.
And we are here together for the Wonder Woman 75th anniversary. Woohoo!
Woo-woo!
Woo-woo! Yeah.
As Etta Cannon would say.
Yeah. Now, technically, the cover date for All-Star Comics number 8 was January 1941, but as it turns out, the actual shelf date was October 25th of 1941, so we're celebrating a few months earlier than I had planned anyway. But, hey, that's okay.
It would be hard to get this done during the holidays anyway, so it's probably best we're getting in right before Halloween when we're a little bit more game for it all.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay, well, I had some possible discussion topics here. The first one is, what do you wish more people knew about Wonder Woman? Frank, you go ahead.
Oh, great. Thanks. I wish more people realized that she's not a warrior first. She's a warrior when she has to be. We were talking earlier. It's cool when Wonder Woman's got a sword or an axe or something when things have really hit the fan. But 9 times out of 10, Wonder Woman's going to come at you with the open hand, not the closed fist. It's a last resort. She can kick the living hell out of you, but what she wants to do is actually save you. And she wants to bond with you. She's a fraternity amongst all peoples. And that's the direction I wish more people came at her from instead of trying to turn her into Xena.
Definitely. See, what I do is I call it the 300ization of Wonder Woman, especially in the New 52. Hey, look at that, 300, directed by Zack Snyder. He ruined Wonder Woman already before he even started Man of Steel. Goody.
And last year they did DC, all their comics 1 month were parodies of Warner Brother movie posters, and Wonder Woman's was a 300 parody. It was her with her sword raised in the 300 style, and it across in blood it said, "Tonight we dine in Themyscira."
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, pretty much.
Well, it's one of those easy tacks. What happens is you're assigned a book like Wonder Woman, or maybe you campaign for it because you know it'll have a certain amount of prestige and profile. And so your approach is, well, this isn't selling as good as it ought to be. Let me see what I can do to fix it. And so you borrow whatever's hot in popular culture at the time that bears a superficial resemblance, and you kind of force it onto that project. And it happens for tons of books. And it happens in all media, but you never get anywhere by just aping what somebody else has done successfully, especially when you apply it incorrectly. And to me, I think that, like, for instance, Aquaman's had this big revival in recent years. And while I have some issues with some of the things they've chosen to do, overall, I think what they've done is figured out what people really liked about Aquaman and brought that to the fore with some really talented people who, to make it accessible for everybody. It's like, you want to see Ivan Reis draw anybody. If it happens to be Aquaman, the stories have to be great, then yeah, I'm going to buy a bunch of Aquaman comics, and suddenly this guy's going to outsell the X-Men. And I think and hope, I haven't read the current run of by Rucka and Nicola Scott and Liam Sharp, but it looks gorgeous. And given my past history reading Rucka, I know that I can expect a certain amount of awareness of who the character is supposed to be, as opposed to him just turning her into what he wants her to be. And so my hope is that we're going to have the same kind of renaissance with Wonder Woman that we had with Aquaman. Although there is going to be a bunch of sword play and such, I expect that because of the movie. But I'm hoping we get closer to the real Wonder Woman. Have y'all been reading that series? Can y'all speak to that?
I've read the first 3, I think, right now, and I kind of ran out of time to read the others. So, but I've liked what I've read so far. When I heard that Ruck was coming back, it was like a Messiah descending from the sky. It's the second coming since he left right before Infinite Crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, real quick, this is Angela editing our conversation. Some of the parts of the recording got garbled, and unfortunately our backup recording failed, so I'll be jumping in from time to time to fill in the gaps. What happened here was I said that I have the 3 comics that I'm recapping and reviewing for WFP, so I don't really have much time to keep up with current releases. But when I heard Rucka was coming back, I was really excited.
I think what Rucka's doing right now is working really well, getting that warrior ambassador island of Paradise Island mix going on there. I think he's the one that can bring it back to that. Before, when they did the New 52 one, she had a few. I mean, the majority of it had that problem. It was totally unbalanced. It was trying to do the 300 style thing. A couple of times they did. There were little gleams of hope for her.
Your one comment there inspired me. Which one do you prefer, Paradise Island or Themyscira?
I like Woodland. I like it. I think once again it was the Rucka era where they referred to it as Paradise Island, like offhand as slang, but then it was like officially the island city state of Themyscira.
Okay.
I definitely like Paradise Island, just because there was a long-standing feud between Eric Larson and Peter David. And Peter David was writing Aquaman. I'm not trying to turn this to the Aquaman podcast, but it just worked out that way. And the guy who was responsible for Aquaman losing his hand, Peter David named him after a Greek deity. Y'all might be more familiar with him. I think it's Charybdis. And so Eric Larson came onto the book after Peter David, in part just because he wanted to undo as much of David's work as possible because of their mutual animosity. And so one of the first things he did is decide, well, nobody knows what a Charybdis is. I don't even know how to say that. I'm just going to call him Piranha Man. And in that instance, there's some sour grapes involved with it. But I do think that Eric Larson had a bit of a point. Nobody has ever done anything with Charybdis because nobody knows how to pronounce it and nobody knows how to spell it. And little kids can't say words like that. And I think at the end of the day, most comic books, especially in the mainstream, you have to make sure that a kid can have an entry point into that and can actually say the names and such. And I just think that Paradise Island is a concept where you say it and you automatically have a mental image of what you're talking about. And I think that sometimes people need to be reminded that it's supposed to be a Paradise Island. It's not supposed to be this place where there are these, people that are full of hate and are running around killing people. And if people have a problem finding true north sometimes with the Amazons. So I think that calling it Paradise Island is a good reminder of where you're supposed to be heading with those characters.
Yeah, I know for me, at first I thought Paradise Island was a goofy name and I liked Themyscira, but now that I've gotten a lot more into the 40s comics and seen where they're coming from, Paradise Island has just become more normal, just less dorky than it was when I first heard it.
It's like from the outside in, it just was dumb. But now that I'm, a true believer and I worship at the altar on a nightly basis, this makes perfect sense now.
I mean, that's kind of my whole story with Wonder Woman. So yeah. Okay. Well, if you were in charge of rebooting the comics yet again, how would you do her origin story? This is for both of you. Is there one that you think is perfect but needs one or two tweaks, or would you throw everything out and do something different, or what do you think?
I will say that the older I get, the more of a traditionalist I become. I think that when somebody is a creator of a character, then that's the person you look to first. There are exceptions to that, like somebody like Frank Miller coming on to Daredevil. Whatever Daredevil was before Frank Miller, and I've known people that 30 years after the fact were still like, Frank Miller ruined Daredevil. But everybody who likes Daredevil in the modern era knows him because of what Frank Miller did with him. So there are always going to be exceptions. But generally, if a person creates a character and they have success with that and they bring fans to that character, then you probably want to go back to what the creator's intent was. And while I think that there are some good tweaks that have been done to William Moulton Marston's origin, I think you start there and then you can kind of play with it from there. But if you get too far away from the original origin, you were just kind of doing your own thing. And ultimately, I don't think that those stand the test of time, and they're often not as powerful because there was a reason why these characters and these concepts connected to a fan base in the first place.
Very cool. Matt, any input?
Yeah, for me, the George Perez, and I'm assuming the current Rucka. I haven't gotten to where Steve Trevor crashes on the island yet, but I guess probably the George Perez I think is just about the perfect mix of kind of the modern fantasy with the original Marston origin. My thing on the origin is it's a really easy origin to do. You know, I don't know why so many media that they've made have like messed it up. As long as you have, the Amazons leaving man's world for their own peaceful ways on their own island. You have Diana born from Hippolyta's will and love for a child, blessed by the gods. You have Steve Trevor crashing later on for whatever reason, whether that's World War II or Ares igniting the Cold War, or and then her leaving with Trevor to spread the Amazon's ideals of peace to the world. I feel like if you have those, you have the origin right. The best adaptation out of the comics has been the Lynda Carter show. I'd say they keep it very simple. It's not that difficult. The same thing happens with Superman and Batman's origins. The more they add on to it, the less gooder, the less I enjoy it. Like I think John Byrne rebooted Superman in the 80s after the Crisis and added a bunch of stuff like that babies on Krypton aren't really born, they're cloned, and that the spaceship was actually his like cloning pod and stuff. It's like you're overcomplicating it. Come on.
Yeah, I think that he wanted to have Kal-El born actually on Earth. He wanted him to be like a son of Earth, and so he went through all those contortions to make that happen. And a lot of people, it just never really clicked for them. It certainly doesn't click for me. So.
It doesn't matter where he was born. I'm sorry, this is me going on a mini rant about Superman. Yes, he was born on Krypton, and technically he's an alien. But he's not an alien character because he was raised in Kansas. He knows Earth culture. He doesn't understand Kryptonian culture. Supergirl understands Kryptonian culture. He is an adopted kid who never knew his previous family, and so for him, this is normal. All these, we've got to make Superman this weird alien who doesn't understand humans. No! The point is that despite the fact that he is physically an alien, he's the most humane character in the DCU. That's the point of Superman. Sorry, rant over.
No, that's perfect.
No, good point, yeah.
My feeling is, especially in our current climate of xenophobia, there's too many people who want to put qualifiers on what makes you a citizen or what, wherever you happen to be from. And I think what's important is, do you have love for the place where you're at? Will you help your fellow man there? Will you help the citizens? Do you want to be a protective part of that particular society? If so, then you should be embraced by that society, because a lot of times your immigrants are going to be more patriotic and more loving toward their adoptive home than they were toward the ones they came from. And so when you have to go through those sort of contortions to make Superman an earthling sort of kinda, I think it sends the wrong message. It's like I remember there was a recent hubbub about, I think it was a Supergirl show, where they were trying to say that Kara's adoptive parents and adoptive family were somehow less than her Kryptonian ones. And a lot of people who are children of adoption took issue with that. I think, again, sometimes they overcomplicate it and they try to make some sort of point with these characters, when if you just leave it alone and let them tell stories as they were originally laid down, they speak to more people than you maybe realize, and you don't know who you're disenfranchising by making these changes that you think are innocuous but are actually very impactful to people.
Yes. Yep. That. I want to give my mini origin for Wonder Woman, if I may. I like the idea that the gods decide, hey, World War II, this is bad. We need to get the Amazons out there to try to stop this. But then I also like the idea of Wonder Woman having an origin in the modern age. So I kind of, if it was me, if DC hands me the reins of Wonder Woman, good luck with that. I'd do something. There was a bit in the mid 2000s, I want to say, where Hippolyta was Wonder Woman because Diana was dead, because comics, and she went back in time to the 40s and she became the Golden Age Wonder Woman.
Yes.
I would kind of reverse that. I would have Hippolyta and the Amazons, they have their trouble with man's world, so they leave. And then World War II happens, and Steve crashes, and they're like, we need a Wonder Woman. So Hippolyta goes with him reluctantly. She doesn't want to go back to man's world. But she goes off with him, and maybe she inspires the whole Rosie the Riveter, we can do it type of thing. But then, where it's almost over, she says, okay, I'm done here. This is, everything seems to be good. I've inspired women's equality now. I'm going to go back home. I don't need these morons anymore. She goes back, but she's been inspired. She saw children, and now she wants a child. And so then, however many decades later, then this is the beauty of it. It could either be the 70s or today or 40 years from now. She then says, okay, I'm going to have this kid. She has the kid, she sculpts the baby from clay. And then one night, a boat crashes on Paradise Island, and out of the boat comes Etta Candy. And she's like, oh, hey, you guys are Amazons. Yeah, that's great. We had a lot of equality back in the 40s, but then the 50s happened and the equality kind of went away, and we've been struggling with it for a while. And in some places it's great, but in other places there's still human trafficking and stuff. And so then Hippolyta goes, oh my goodness, I made the worst mistake ever. And so then Diana goes off to man's world. That's yeah. And then the funny bit that I came up with, once she gets back, Etta Candy, takes her to Holiday College where she's studying under Professor Julia Capitelis, and all random little references. Yeah.
Love Professor Capitelis.
She is cool. I'm really digging her in the Perez series.
I like both the Capitalises as well.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to throw one out there. Well, you know what? Never mind. I'm going to hold back. I'm putting together a collection of hot takes for later on.
Okay.
But it is funny that you happen to reference another bone of contention with Wonder Woman that was directly related to John Byrne. So it all kind of ties together.
Okay, the next topic is, what are your thoughts on the movie? What are your hopes and your fears for the movie is maybe a more accurate question.
I keep putting Matt first because I'm awful like that.
Yeah, either one.
Okay, I'll throw in right quick because I've talked about it a lot in various places, so I'm not going to belabor it too much. I'm guardedly hopeful. I've got no major, huge qualms with where the movie's at right now from what I've seen, from what I've heard, aside from the insider that was pilloried by Warner Brothers and the director for speaking out, even though this is a person that nobody has been able to identify. You may have heard about that on Pajiba. My sincere hope is that either they figured out what they were doing when they started filming in the first place, or if they didn't at the time, that they're quietly fixing whatever was broken in the movie. And I really want a Wonder Woman movie that's Wonder Woman. This is going to be the first one where we really have a true heroine out there, somebody who everybody knows, who's a big deal, who could be like a spearhead for one of these universes. Because where Superman and to a lesser degree Batman are somewhat faltering at DC right now, Wonder Woman could really step up and be like DC's Iron Man, the guy who's like, oh, this is what DC is capable of. And it would be so wonderful if they were that character, a character that DC has maligned so much over the years and has had so much fewer opportunities than her counterparts. So I want this movie to work. I'm not confident because I haven't had a lot of confidence instilled in me by what Warner Brothers has done in a long time, much of their adaptations with DC product. But I want this to work. I sincerely hope it works. Regardless if it's terrible or not, I'm going to be there. If not on opening day, then very, very close to opening day, because in my lifetime I've wanted to see a Wonder Woman movie. This is one of those things I can check off my bucket list, basically. So I hope that it's worth the long wait.
Yeah. I know for me, when I read the quotes from Patty Jenkins, the director, and Gal Gadot, the actress, I like it. It sounds like they know what they're doing. And the trailer looks amazing. But then I remember Suicide Squad, and that trailer looked amazing, and everyone thought that was going to be great. And apparently that movie was ruined in editing. I haven't seen the movie myself. I had no interest in seeing it. But from everything I hear, people say that it was ruined in the editing. They tried to mush everything together, and it didn't work.
What I've heard recently is that the company they hired to edit the movie itself was actually the company that made the trailer, because they were trying to get that same bam, 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 bam feel to it. But you can't have that in a movie. But yeah, I agree that's what messed up that movie. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, so this is the problem. You can take a good movie and you can edit it so that it's a bad movie. And if Man of Steel and Batman v Superman and now Suicide Squad isn't actually just the director messing up, it's the studio interfering, this could be a big problem. So I'm a lot more nervous than I was before Suicide Squad. I want it to be a good movie. Never ever doubt that I want this movie to be good. But I'm just nervous that this is going to be the new Transformers, that the movies are going to come out and they're going to make a lot of money and China's going to love them. But the critics all hate it, and most people say that movie was really awful. That's my fear, that nobody really loves the movie, like the Transformer, where it makes all the monies, but no one actually enjoys a new Transformers movie.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, that they're just going to keep on when the movies make money because everyone's excited for it. The movie's awful, but it made enough money. They're going to make another one. Yeah, it's no fiber, all sugar. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm pretty hopeful for it. I've liked a lot of franchises that have pretty awful adaptation histories. The Wizard of Oz is one of those. So I've been able to compartmentalize the original version of the thing, and then the version that I love, and then the version we're being shown. So I usually have some pretty thick skin on adaptations like that. I'm pretty hopeful for this one, though. I really like Gal Gadot. I liked what they did with her in Batman v Superman mostly. I kind of like how they're. It looks to me like they're going to be. She's going to be younger and hopeful and idealistic in the Wonder Woman movie, and then that's kind of prequeling her being kind of done with man's world and everything, and darker in the Batman v Superman movie, which kind of like everything's infected by the dark and broody.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're going to lighten her back up for Justice League. I think everyone's going to be more superheroes, you know. So if that's what they're doing, I'm hoping that is the case. I mean, yeah.
Someone did point out online, and I saw it was like, this movie as a prequel, it's going to have to end in such a way that we'll believe that this bright, cheerful, loving character is going to completely divorce herself from the rest of the world for 90 years, 100 years, and I'm like, that's depressing. I mean, I'm calling it here. Steve Trevor is probably going to die at the end, and she's probably going to either go back to Paradise Island or hide out in the Antarctic or something.
Have you seen the third season of Lynda Carter's show yet?
I am doing my show more or less live. I might watch an episode ahead here and there, but I'm pretty much keeping up with it according to my show.
I guess it's not really a spoiler because it's 30 years ago, but
no worries.
You're probably aware of this already. In the third season, she leaves man's world to go back to Paradise Island and shows up again in the I guess the 70s for season 3.
Mm-hmm.
And
I thought that was season. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it was a season.
I think it was season 2. From what I was reading, it's only season 1 is in World War II, and then in season 2 and 3 they go to
That sounds right. And then it's still Brian Wagner.
You talking about Lyle Wagner? Lyle Wagner.
Lyle Wagner. Yep.
Lyle Wagner. He's still playing Steve Trevor, but now it's Steve Trevor Jr.
Yeah.
I keep laughing, like, don't let them do that in Justice League. Have Chris Pine. I'm Steve Trevor Jr.
He did say it. There was an interview or something. He did say he was only playing one character.
Excellent.
Well, in Wonder Woman at least. So if they do a Captain America thing where it ends in the modern day, at least he won't be there. If he shows up in Justice League, yeah, who knows?
Well, you know, the great thing being
Would they freeze her?
Well, that's the nice thing about them.
I mean, she was created to compete against Captain America. We gotta admit this. That's why she wears the flag bathing suit. That's why the super patriotic stuff at the beginning. This is just a fact of the character.
And Steve Rogers, Steve Trevor, Monkey Buns.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about Captain America, too, is that his fate was sealed by his story. Everybody knows the story of how he got from World War II to whatever the modern age happens to be at that point in time. The great thing about Wonder Woman is there isn't like a core story that tell about how she gets from World War I to the modern era. So honestly, they could leave it happy and just leave that to a sequel or leave that to something to be revealed in a later movie. They don't have to go downer with her if they don't want to.
This is this DC cinematic murderverse. It's probably going to be a downer. I'm sorry to say.
Yeah, there was a line. There's a line she says in Batman v Superman where she. I wish I could remember it now. It's been a while since I've watched. Where she mentions that she's been gone. She's been really fed up with man's wars, and that's why she's been gone for so long. I wish I could remember exactly what the line was because there's context around it that matters.
Yeah, I know what I know the line you're thinking of. I can't remember exactly what it is off the top of my head. But yeah, that line I think specifically is the one that makes me nervous that Steve is going to die somehow in the war, and so she's going to be super depressed and just drop off the face of the map for years.
Oh, I hope that's not the case.
Yeah.
I hope they don't fridge Steve Trevor.
Let's look on the bright side. I just watched the 5-minute 60s pilot. What's that? Who's Afraid of Diana Prince? I watched that today. I've seen it before, but it cannot be worse than that. That is the bright side. It cannot be worse than that.
Well, and it kills me too because part of what made Batman work was they were doing a sort of semi-straight-faced adaptation of those comics, and they were inherently ridiculous by transporting them from 4-colors to live action. Yep. It kills me that they felt the need. No, we're gonna jazz it up with Wonder Woman. We got to change some stuff with that. And if they just done the same exact thing they did with Batman, they might have had a successful show, or at least something that wasn't just gross.
Yeah. I mean, they managed it. 10 some years later with the Lynda Carter show, but yeah, that 60s one is
original Wonder Woman.
How excited are we though for Batman 66, Wonder Woman 77?
That's going to be fun.
I've been hoping they were going to do that since 77 came out.
Are they doing like a time warp, or they're just mashing them together and just saying, "Hey, it works. Who cares?" Or
I think they're just throwing all the toys together. Yeah.
Okay.
My understanding is the first 2 issues are going to take place in the 40s with a child, Bruce Wayne. I can't believe I blanked on Batman's name. I'm getting old.
Turn in your nerd card.
I know, right
now. You are no longer allowed to talk about comic books forever. Goodbye.
So the first 2 are young Bruce Wayne in the World War II era. The second 2 issues are 66. And the final 2 issues are 77.
Oh, that's cool. That works. Cool. That definitely works.
Oh, have you guys seen the stuff for Bionic Woman yet? Wonder Woman and Bionic Woman?
Oh no, I missed that. Is that also 77?
Uh-huh.
Nice. Yeah. Nice.
Awesome.
I have reservations just because that one's going to be done by Dynamite, and Dynamite always seems to come up a little short. They always go cheap. Usually if they get a good writer, then they're going to go cheap on the artist or vice versa, where I think they've got some pretty strong talent on the Batman Wonder Woman one. So, but I'm looking forward to both of them. I'm going to buy both of them in trade.
So yeah, they're really Dynamite's really just chucking out the crossover comics. I think they did the Green Lantern, Star Trek.
Yeah, that was IDW.
Sorry?
I think that was IDW, the Green Lantern, Star Trek. Yeah.
And it's either IDW or Boom then that's about to do the Justice League meets the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers comic as well.
I think Boom does have that license. Yeah, that's probably right. Yeah.
I'm kind of excited for that. Yeah, I wish they had gotten to do the Transformers Justice League crossover. Have you guys seen that?
That
Phil
sounds
Jimenez
good.
drew a bunch of art for it, but never got made.
Oh yeah. No, that was like the early 2000s, late 90s, somewhere in there. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, it's so cool. In the background,
What, the Batmobile turns out to be an Autobot, or how's that work?
Oh no! In the background, you see a Spartan invisible jet transform. It's so cool.
Of course.
It's like, oh, we
That's
could have had a
hilarious.
toy of that.
Yep, that's funny. And again, you can listen to the rest of that chat over on Radio Free Themyscira. You can find that on iTunes and SoundCloud, or go to the Radio Free Themyscira podcast Facebook page. And if you haven't already, you can look up Frank on the Diana Prince Wonder Woman podcast on iTunes and at his website, rolledspine.wordpress.com.
Trekker Talk, a fan podcast devoted to the adventures of 23rd century bounty hunter Mercy St. Clair from the pages of Trekker Comics by creator, writer, and artist Ron Randall. I'm Darren.
And I'm Ruth. We'll be discussing the stories, characters, and art in this excellent retro sci-fi adventure series, as well as having side conversations about other areas of fandom.
We hope you'll join us as we travel from the dangerous back streets of New Galuf to the depths of outer space and everywhere in between.
Trekker Talk is available at podbean.com and on iTunes and Stitcher.
Find us at trekkertalk.com.
Okay, let's finish out with a bit of news. As I hope you've heard by now, the United Nations appointed Wonder Woman as the honorary ambassador for the empowerment of women and girls. They declared October 21st Wonder Woman Day. There was a special ceremony at the United Nations with speeches from Diane Nelson, the president of DC Entertainment, as well as, of course, Lynda Carter and Gal Gadot. This was evidently the first time that Gal actually got to meet Lynda, so that's really awesome. Then the celebrations went online. There was a live Facebook chat with Gal and Patty Jenkins, the director of next year's Wonder Woman movie. They then answered fan questions on Twitter, despite a rather annoyingly timed DDoS attack that took down Twitter and a whole bunch of websites. Personally, I suspect it was the work of a supervillain, possibly Dr. Cyber. There was also supposed to be a live Facebook Q&A with Lynda Carter, but there was some kind of scheduling conflict, so that ended up not happening. The appointment ceremony wasn't entirely good news. There were some protesters angry that the position was being given to a fictional character instead of a real-life woman. I can kind of understand their point, though from what I was reading it seems that this isn't uncommon for the UN to appoint fictional characters for certain causes, like I think Tinkerbell is honorary ambassador of green, and Winnie the Pooh, I guess, is the honorary ambassador of friendship. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. This was a promotional thing between Warner Bros. And the UN, trying to raise awareness for very important issues, yes, but I'm sure promoting Wonder Woman before her big screen solo movie debut comes out was just a little bit of a factor. Also, depending on when I get this episode out, the TV show Supergirl will either be about to release or have just released the third episode of their second season, in which Lynda Carter is playing President Olivia Marsdin, which is a nice reference there. Obviously, the last name Marsdin is a reference to Wonder Woman creator William Moulton Marston, and his second wife, the one who wore cuff bracelets instead of a wedding ring and was a big inspiration for the character, her name was Olive. Lastly, there's a professional photographer who made his 3-year-old daughter a really nice movie Wonder Woman costume, and had a photo shoot session with her, and then photoshopped those pictures to recreate different screenshots from Batman v Superman and the Wonder Woman trailer. They're really, really awesome. As always, I will include links to all of this in the show notes. You can find those on the main site at wonderwomanwarriorforpeace.wordpress.com. Okay, that's it for this special 75th anniversary episode of Warrior for Peace. If you have any questions, comments, complaints, concerns, conundrums, or queries, you can email me at wonderwomanwarriorforpeace@gmail.com. If you're okay with your message being read on the podcast, please let me know. You can download episodes directly at the main website, wonderwomanwarriorforpeace.wordpress.com, and there you can also find links to the iTunes and Stitcher feeds. You can look the show up on Facebook, YouTube, Tumblr, and Instagram under Wonder Woman Warrior for Peace, and on Twitter and Pinterest as Wonder Woman WFP. The intro music was Wonder Woman theme, The Best Themysciran Symphony Dialogue Dance Mix by Taz Damien Devil. You can watch the full video on his YouTube channel. The outro music is Wonder by the Double Clicks, and you can find them on their website at thedoubleclicks.com. Next episode, I will be reviewing Sensation Comics Volume 1, Issue 7, Wonder Woman Volume 2, Issue 8, Wonder Woman Volume 4, Issue 8, and Wonder Woman Season 1, Episode 7. But until then, remember, sisters, hopes may fade, but wonders never cease.
'Cause you're not a quitter, you still believe the truth's in your lasso, your heart's on your sleeve, and when we're drowning in darkness, you'll save us all from going under, and we'll watch you